All right. I've had a lot of questions this spring about people wanting to build these drum filters and wanting a parts list. So here goes. This is a standard 55-gallon drum. You can get them pretty cheap on Craigslist and Marketplace. I don't ever pay more than $10 for them where I'm at, but your mileage may vary. So, let's start with these Uniseals. I use these Uniseals on all these drum systems. I've never had one leak. They don't care about the curved surface of the drum, and they're like $5 a piece. Amazon, eBay. Way cheaper than bulkheads, way less finicky than bulkheads, and they just work, period. So, we're going to start from the bottom up. Everything you see that's below the Uniseal, all the stuff is on the outside of the drum. Everything above it here you see is on the inside of the drum. Sans the 2 hole saws you will need to make your holes here. Your 2-inch pipe requires a 3-inch hole saw. Your 1.5-inch pipe requires a 2.5-inch hole saw. So working from the bottom up, you got a gate valve down here. This is for your clean out. This will go all the way down at the very bottom of the drum. For when you churn up your media to flush it, you open that gate valve, it sucks all the crud off the bottom, and it will flush it out. So that's 1.5-inch gate valve, 1.5-inch Uniseal. This is a length of 1.5-inch pipe. It's just perforated. I use a miter saw, cutoff saw, whatever saw you have handy. If you don't have a saw, you can drill little 1/4-inch holes in it. A lot of people are more comfortable with that, depending on your DIY skill. Main thing is you just need a bunch of holes in a pipe, the bottom of the drum. Your holes, your slits, whatever, obviously need to be small enough that your media, your K1, your K2, whatever media you're using in here doesn't pass through it. Otherwise, when you open your valve here, all your media is going to be laying out in the yard. This pipe needs to be capped. This connection right here is the only thing I actually solvent weld inside the drum. There's no reason for this cap to ever come off. And you don't want to risk knocking it off when you're churning up your media again, or your media will all be out in the yard. So this is the only connection inside the drum that gets solvent welded. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, everything outside your drum needs to be solvent welded, because if that comes loose, you drain your pond, and we try to refrain from that. Alright, here's your input. So this will be the input from your pond into the drum. This is a one-way check valve. Relatively inexpensive, cheap little flapper type. You can see the flapper in there maybe. Yeah, there you go. When you put these in, you want your flapper, if I can find the camera, to be facing down. So you want the hinge of it to be upward. What this does is when you shut your pump off to clean your drum, it again keeps all your media from backfeeding into the pond, which, don't ask me how I know, is incredibly annoying trying to fish out a couple cubic feet of media out of your pond. So, it'll be a length of pipe on here, actually it's right there, through the Uniseal. I put a 45 on these so it turns down, pointed down into the drum, and then I angle it a little bit so you get a little bit of a vortex action at the bottom of the drum. You don't want it swirling like a whirling dervish, because then your solids will never settle. You just want a real slow, easy rotation at the bottom of the drum. So, again, this is not solvent welded, so you can adjust that once you're up and running as you see fit. This will be the output, which happens to be... That's not... Output's over here. The way I've got this oriented for him, clean out in the bottom, clean out in the output are on one side, and his input is on the opposite side. So this is your output returning back to the pond. This is a piece of 2-inch pipe. Going through a 2-inch Uniseal, angles up, goes into this riser, and I know the original design of this used slotted vent towers. Not to get off topic here, but they looked like this. And I had found that using shower drains is a little more efficient because it forces all the water actually up through all of the media, not just through the path of least resistance on the slotted tower. So this is a 2-inch shower drain. These holes don't come in it. I drill these holes in it. Thought being, this is your main source of your overflow and return to your pond, that being your fail-safe backup. So should for some reason this get all clogged with algae and buildup or whatever, you have this as your backup to return to the pond before it overflows your drum. I've never had these get anywhere remotely dirty enough. Even when my media is really dirty, it'll come up and I'll get a little bit of water trickling over here, but never has it become an issue. Again, these holes need to be smaller than your media, or else your media will be in the pond. I chamfer these holes. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but little bits of algae like to get snagged and caught on everything given the opportunity, and for the couple seconds it takes to chamfer them, that's all I do. Again, none of this is solvent welded. Everything inside the drum is just friction fit. It all stays put unless you go in there and just clobber it silly with your cleaning brush or whatever you use to churn up your media. So that's your basic parts list. It's really not much. It's incredibly inexpensive to build. And I will give a quick little shot here at the end of everything assembled. Oh, quick assembly note. When you're pushing this pipe through your uniseals, bevel the edge like that a little bit. If you've got a sander, a grinder, if you're really desperate, just drag it along a piece of concrete till you bevel that edge like that. It makes pushing it through these uniseals a lot easier. Well, it makes it easier. I won't say a lot easier. A little Vaseline on here too goes a long way. Forcing myself to refrain from comments here. Yeah, a little Vaseline on there, and you literally just give her a good shove and they'll go right through. But having that beveled edge does make it quite a bit easier. So let me shove this together and I'll be right back. Alright, and we're back. So here is the completed unit. Your clean out, your gate valve, 1.5-inch pipe through an 1.5-inch uniseal. Pro tip, when you solvent weld this joint up here, open the gate valve and leave it open for a good 10-15 minutes after you glue this up. Not that I've ever done it, but I've heard rumors. If you get a little drop of that solvent in here and it gets on that gate valve, you'll permanently glue your gate valve shut, rendering it not so much a valve, just a gate. Moving on. Have your input, your 1.5-inch check valve, solvent welded, 1.5-inch pipe. Comes in here, got a fit 90 on it, turned down, angled a little bit just to give a little bit of radial flow in here. Media, obviously, will be filled up in here. Media will come up water level, which runs about here in the drum. As your media gets dirtier, it will raise up. It's obviously not going to come, well, obviously, I like to leave, I don't know, 6-7 inches or so between the top of the overflow to the top of your drum. Just gives you a safety margin in here. As I said, the media will typically run right around this height. As it gets dirty, I have had it kind of pile up here 1 inch or 2 above the backup. I've never overflowed a drum or anything, but that's where I set them, right, wrong, or indifferent. It goes down, 2-inch pipe, 2-inch uniseal. Out here, returns to the pond. This is longer than it needs to be, but not exactly sure where my customer's putting it. I know it's going in a barn next to his duck pond, and I left this longer in case he wants to poke both of these right through the siding, or I'm not sure what he's doing, but better to leave it long and cut it off later. Clean out, we already went over that. There's your clean out pipe in the bottom. This here is solvent welded. Don't ever want that coming off. This just sits in the bottom like that, and when you clean your filter, pull that valve, out it goes. It's not critically important this be absolutely on the bottom. This one's maybe sitting 1.5 inches or so off the bottom. That little bit's not going to make any noticeable difference whatsoever. The only other thing I do with the lid, this is a removable lid. If the only barrels you can find are the solid that don't, just cut the top off. You don't have to have a lid, but it keeps the bugs and gnats, and well, it keeps the majority of them. I drill a little 1/4-inch vent hole in here. It's the only thing I do to the lid. When you fill these, it's going to displace a lot of air, which will just pop the lid up a little bit and it'll vent out by itself if you don't have the hole. Problem is when you go to drain it, now first off, your lid should be off, but if you shut the pump off, the water level is going to sink down a bit, and it actually creates a vacuum on here, and sometimes will pop your check valve open. So just put a little 1/4-inch vent hole in here and it's all good. So that is a one completed K1 Media drum filter. This is going to be run static because it is strictly for mechanical filtration for a duck pond. You will get more biological filtration out of it than people give it credit for, even though it's not fluidized. K1 is a fantastic media that cultures bacteria like a fiend. So while it's not meant as a dedicated biofilter, its primary function is a mechanical filter, you will get some biological benefit out of it. So there you have it. Minimal parts, simple to build. So the hardest thing about this entire thing is getting these pipes through the uniseal. Bevel it, lube it up, sometimes a second person to hang on to the drum, and put your hips into it. Again, refraining from jokes. It's a very phallic process, but it needs to be done. So, in the name of science. That's all. If you got questions, as always, don't hesitate to ask. Later.